Your girlfriend came to visit today? Is that what you said?
Who? Damien?
Your girlfriend came to visit, right?
Damien or Hank? Who are you talking to, man?
I don't know. Who you guys talking to?
What's up, Damo? What's up, Babos? Hold on. Give me 1 second.
I'll be back.
Let me send the invitation. Let me see the invitation. Is that better or worse? I feel like that's worse.
Yeah, it looks like you are in the dark.
I need to close the blinds here so you guys can see.
Yeah. And so, welcome to this
What's the title today?
Open Veil Ministry.
What's the title?
It's called The Origin of Evil.
Okay.
And we're going to start soon.
You guys see me now?
We're going to start very soon with the topic of today, the origin of evil. And I'm going to have some of the guys with me on
I feel like it's probably better if I had more
on the Zoom chat. And so as they start setting up for us to start today's meeting. And so I hope you guys enjoy and welcome. If it's the first time, you can always subscribe and hit the notification bell, and you can also comment. What are you guys talking about, huh? I heard my name.
Hey, don't fight with Ruben, bro.
Why? He wants to fight, not me.
Yeah, I know his stance on that. I was like, when I saw him comment, I was like, oh man.
I think it's, you know, I'm not gonna even comment.
Super liberal.
Oh, is it? Oh. You see,
it's not gonna change his views.
I'm not gonna comment, but because I kind of know that when it comes to these things, it's a matter of preference. Whether the Bible agrees with you or not, they're gonna prefer something. So to me, it's like okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, you see, like I mentioned, I don't hate syncopated music. I think it needs to have a balance in it. If not too much, then it kills it. But
the only argument I had against Bernal is that he's not really musically trained, though. So it's kind of, I mean, but I understand that, I'm like more towards, conservative music, but I'm like more, I guess, like, but not super, like, too conservative, just like only hymns,
Oh, no.
I feel like songs that are, they're contemporary, but like don't have, like the, very hard beat are appropriate for church,
You see, the other thing, I kind of realize when people that I think this is a matter of, it's not about if you are I was oh yeah.
You can't even see me.
The thing is, I think maybe people actually
why did it come out so bad?
They like, Damien, what are you doing?
I was trying to set this thing, but
oh yeah.
It's not gonna work.
Yeah, it's not gonna work.
My bad. I cut you off a little bit.
Wait, are we gonna go live soon? I'm already ready.
Yeah. It's kind of dark in this room. There's really nothing I can do about
it. Maybe turn around and face the light.
Is Casey joining, Damien, or she? I'm on the desk like this.
Oh. Okay.
Please, I'm using the desk, but it's okay. I can just use this.
So, are we gonna go live soon on Facebook, Peter?
I think my brother's in charge.
Or is what is he doing?
Let me check.
Bruh. Funny face, man. I don't know where to put this thing. I'm gonna try here.
But I hope we're not live, man.
Dude, the thing is, these blinds don't really help a lot.
No, we're not live yet because he would stay on top. Edwin, where is Edwin at?
Let me check.
Is that better?
Can you go live on his? Can you go live for us, Peter? Since you're there already. Yeah. Aye.
I need some WD-40 with this chair.
Yeah, you definitely do that. You definitely do need. So, Edwin,
Yeah, fine. What happened?
Just in case, I'll take my face off just so I don't do anything dumb when we're live.
okay, I think now we are going live.
Come back, bro. Come back. We need more faces on
We
here.
are live almost now on Facebook.
Okay.
Is Casey joining or no?
No.
I don't think so. She's busy. She has something else to do with her church.
All right, we are now live, and so welcome everyone. Welcome to today's meeting on the book Great Controversy, chapter 29, entitled "The Origin of Evil." And so I'm going to start quickly with the first paragraph because I think it's important to lay the foundation of. Well, I'm not going to read the whole paragraph, but I'm going to start with that paragraph. It's actually in page 492 and paragraph 1, where it says, "To many minds, the origin of sin and the reason for its existence are a source of great perplexity. They see the work of evil with its terrible results of woe and desolation, and they question how all this can exist under the sovereignty of one who is infinite in wisdom, in power, and in love." And I'm going to stop right here because I'm sure most of us have heard people say, you know, if God is so loving, so just, and so merciful, why is so much evil prevailing in this world? And so, and so today we're going to look at the origin of evil, how it started. And I was actually thinking about it this morning, and I had a question in my mind as of uh, how would God explain to us how it started? Or because I know for sure there is no reason for its existence. And I still cannot understand, I still cannot fathom the way or why evil exists in a sense. So let me lay that question out to everyone. Anyone would like to answer? So, how do you guys explain to someone how evil started and why did it start? So the
How do
question
I
was,
explain? You said.
the question was, how do you explain to someone why evil started and uh, and the existence of it?
Well, I mean, the Bible tells us, like the devil wanted more and more, like self-exaltation or power for himself. He wanted to be just like God.
Okay, but how does that bring evil in the world?
It was selfishness.
Okay, and so the idea is for evil to exist, and now for evil to exist, we still don't understand how. We just know that there was an angel called Lucifer that wanted to become like God, not in character, but more likely in power. He wanted power, and then I guess he became dissatisfied. And the spirit of it is just a mystery. How it came about? How did Satan become that? And so I think that's a question I can only ask God, and He can give you an answer. And so maybe one day when I meet Him face to face, I'll ask Him, how did that spirit of dissatisfaction got into Satan or in Lucifer? And so, as I mentioned, the it does mention later on that it is impossible to so explain the origin of sin as to give a reason for its existence. Yet enough may be understood concerning both the origin and the final disposition of sin to fully make manifest the justice and benevolence of God in all his dealings with evil. And nothing is more plainly taught in Scripture than that God was in no wise responsible for the entrance of sin. And so, basically, God is not the one that um, is responsible for sin to enter the world. Yet many could actually blame God for allowing sin to exist. And question is, if somebody were to blame God about for the origin of sin or for allowing sin to exist, how could you respond to them by defending God's position on the interest of sin?
Well, we know that God has given freedom to each and every one of us, and even before us, like also Lucifer and all the angels, like they had freedom as well. And there's this quote that's close to the beginning of the chapter. I don't have markings on my book, but it says, there was one that chose to pervert his freedom, or this freedom. Sin originated with him who, next to Christ, had been most honored of God and stood highest in power and glory among all inhabitants of heaven.
And so, what
So,
does that represent, Damien?
well, for me, I mean, it's talking about how highly honored Lucifer was. Like he was considered like amongst one of the best, and so I mean, to give that up, like that just means you wanted something else. You wanted so much more than God has already given you. So we can see the selfishness, and also, at the same time, like God had given him the freedom to choose. So it wasn't that God created evil. Like answering your question, it wasn't that God created evil. It was that somebody decided to, I guess, make a decision there.
Yeah, and so that's actually how we should be able to explain, because people might assume that God is basically allowing evil to exist, and when He could have done something about it. And of course, He could have done something about it, but what would have been the result of Him at that moment trying to destroy sin? They would not understand the reason behind it. And so that, I think, is how we're gonna continue, because it's gonna be a little more complex. And I think so far that's the most complex chapter, because those are questions that we ask that we cannot really answer, because we think we may understand, but in reality, we know that there could be something even deeper that we have no clue about. So, as you mentioned, God gave everyone the free will. But here's the question: by God given freedom of choice, did he know? I'm going to ask that question. Did he know that sin would enter the world, um, anyways, in a sense? Because if someone has free will, they can choose to either do or don't. So did he know that that would happen? And I think the answer is yes. But the reason why he allowed it, I think that's a question I'm gonna have to ask him to know exactly why that was the case. And so, but for right now, I think for our limited mind, there are certain things we cannot comprehend, and that's why I can't really ask that question to anybody, because I would not be able to answer it either, in a sense.
True. I also have a question, Mario,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I mean, this is probably something that we're gonna have to ask God too. But um, I wrote it here. It says, "Were the evil angels mad at Satan afterwards?" Because at the moment, and at that time, like all the other angels, they had never experienced sin. Like they didn't know what sin was. So I wonder if, like afterwards, like after they were cast out of heaven, I wonder if the angels were mad at Satan
Uh,
for being deceived, or did they just like say, "Oh well, like this is what we deserve for following him"? Or I wonder what was their thoughts after following Lucifer, Satan. Like I wonder if they got mad at him. Like, man, how could you deceive us into this?
yeah, that's actually.
And this is what I'm thinking about, because like the book mentioned that, and it's true. The Bible mentions it too, that there was no, like, that was the beginning of sin. Like they had never experienced something like that. So
Yeah,
I wonder how they felt. You know,
yeah, that's a very interesting question. I don't know either, actually. I don't know either. I think that's a very
yeah, that's what I was saying. That's a question that I guess I would have to ask God. But I wanted to share a verse. I was talking to Mario about this verse. It's found in 1 Corinthians 10, verse 12. It says, "Therefore, let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall." And then verse 13, "No temptation has overtaken you except such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond that you are able, but with the temptation will also make the way of escape, that you will be able to bear it."
mm,
So I think I look at the story of Satan, like Lucifer, Satan, and how he fell, like how he gave in to that temptation, that selfishness, that greed, that wanting to be greater than God or like God. And in a way, like, okay, we might not struggle with that specific thing, like, oh, I'm wanting to be like God, but we have our own other temptations or other, things that make us stumble. But I think it's important to note that if we do think that we are, you know, like sometimes we may be prideful, or sometimes we may think that, oh, I'm doing really well. But I think it's very important to humble yourself and to always take a step back and realize that it's God that's leading us through this journey, and not ourselves. And so I think it's important because I speak for myself. Like I don't want to get in the mindset of having that selfish like mindset that, oh, I got through this or I did this on my own. Rather, God help me through this. I guess, to prevent self from thinking just like Lucifer did.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. And I think adding to that, I'm going to mention that it is also a big responsibility to be in a position of power. Um, and so, and as we were asking ourselves, I was asking myself, how, like when you mentioned, did the angels that were deceived by Satan, did they get angry at him? Um, my thing is, I don't know, but I wonder, would they would they have followed Satan if he was not in a position of power? That's the first thing I think is the greatest question. Would they have followed Satan? Let's say a lower rank angel had started that was not close to Christ, not close to God the Father. Would they have followed that angel instead of Satan? And so that to me actually uh, is another question that I was also pondering uh, about.
Well, there's this quote that says in the same chapter, all the powers of his master mind were now bent to the work of deception, to secure the sympathy of the angels that had been under his command. And we
Oh,
see that Satan was in command of a lot of angels, so he had I guess some authority. He did have some authority. He did have a level of respect, amongst all the other angels, and he did have that I guess recognition. I mean, he wasn't like God, but God had appointed him as one of the, like, I guess, command of other angels. And so I feel like he did have a big influence on them.
So, can I say something real
go
quick?
ahead, go ahead, Peter.
So, I was reading a chapter in the Patriarchs and Prophets, and it said why sin was permitted, right? And it kind of goes into what actually happened during that time. And the angels, the angels that were following Lucifer, they were getting convinced, but it says convinced by the other angels to repent. But Lucifer, he gave them another deception, saying that they had gone too far to receive forgiveness at that point. Yeah. So then it mentions later, if you guys want to know, it's Patriarch Prophets, page 41.1. It says, but pride, love for their leader, and the desire for unrestricted freedom were permitted to bear sway, and the pleadings of divine love and mercy were finally rejected. So I feel like even though they knew, they were going to get thrown out, they just had a lot of love for Lucifer at that time.
Huh.
That kind of led them out of heaven.
Which means that's a good point. That's a good point. And I read it. I read that chapter from Patriarchs and Prophet. That's a good point. And so that's probably why Jesus said to the when he was on earth, he said the greatest commandment is to love the Lord thy God first, and then love your neighbor. And so because he knows that because they didn't love God supreme, then those angels followed Satan. And of course, ultimately, they're gonna be punished with hellfire. And to people that are listening, hellfire is not eternally. It's simply until the person or the entity dies, and that's it. They die completely. They're not burning eternally. But and so that's why Jesus tells us to first love God supreme. Even the Ten Commandments, it starts first with loving God and then your neighbor. Because if you start doing it the other way, if you love your neighbor over God, then you are more likely doomed to failure, as the angels loved Satan or Lucifer at the time more than God. So that's actually some some consideration, considerable thought that we have to put in for this type of evil to come into this world. But interestingly, even before all this happened, in paragraph uh, 3 of page 495, it says that Lucifer himself did not at first see whither he was drifting. He did not understand the real nature of his feelings. And so, kind of interesting that somebody is making some feelings of dissatisfaction, but yet they don't understand what they are doing. And I was talking to Damon earlier. I was reading from the book of Proverbs, chapter 4, and it says in verse 19, he said, "The ways of the wicked, the ways of the wicked is as darkness; they know not where they stumble." And so it's interesting that people will do certain things that are totally against God or against the Bible, and they think they're doing something good, but because they cannot see in the future, then they keep on going to that path until reality hits. And I think that's the way Satan lures everyone in. He makes it look like all beauty and very aesthetic. It's all butterflies and good looking things. And then once you get into the trap, then you realize you are actually getting into a hole and you cannot dig yourself out. And I think that's exactly what he did to the angels and to himself because he didn't know where he was going with that kind of feeling, in a sense. And so the origin of evil, which actually, that's probably why they said that he is the originator of evil, because he started something that he did not understand, and now he brings others with it into his own snare. And now that he's in his own snare, and he is too proud to ask God to take him out of that snare, and so he wants to trap everyone into this kind of snare, which is interesting how everything happens.
That's true. Mario, I wanted to share a point going back to the angels that were deceived. This is from paragraph 497.2. It says, until fully developed, sin would not appear the evil thing it was. So I feel like he had such a big influence. Like they were just tricked into going with him. It's pretty sad.
It is, and I think I also see that when people are doing certain things and you try to warn them, and it seems that they cannot see what you are warning is for their benefit because at the moment it looks nice. And I think that's probably why if God had prevented sin to enter, then I think two things would have happened. One, of course, he would have to destroy Satan and the angels that are sympathizing with him, which would have made the other angels to worship him with fear, meaning being afraid of him. And those other angels not only would have thought maybe Satan was right, but they would have never understood what sin actually is. And so I think God did the wise thing to let sin go, and meaning come into the world, so everyone can see truly the nature of going against His will. But there is the way He actually dealt with it, and that's the contrast between God and Satan. You see, people that are trying to entrap people, they will not tell you. I mean, okay, let's say the devil is not gonna come to you and say, "Hey, I am the devil and I come to steal your soul." Now, if he said that to you, who would sign up? You know, I mean, you wouldn't sign up for it. But actually some would actually sign up. But actually, what Satan does is he uses, as the book says in the next paragraph, 498, no, 498 paragraph 1, the first sentence, it says that Satan could use what God could not use, right? Because God deals with sin or with anything, he deals with righteousness and truth. But Satan uses flattery and deceit. And so when Satan comes to you, he's he's not gonna come with you know how people like to portray Satan with a red costume and two horns and a long tail and a pitchfork, you know. He's not gonna come like that to you. He's gonna come as an angel of light, you know, like he's shining and you're like, oh, you're so amazed, you awed him because he looks so beautiful. But of course, that's a facade. And so, and to people that are listening, don't always think that Satan comes with a red costume and two horns and a pitchfork and a tail, because when he comes as an angel of light, then you're gonna fall down and worship him because you're gonna think it's a good angel. So what do you guys think about that part? Using flattery and deceit.
I mean, Mario, if he was able to deceive like 1/3 of the angels, imagine what he's gonna do in the end. You know, with people who are like us that are, I guess, less intelligent than angels. You know, that's kind of scary to think about.
Yeah. And you know what's even more, you know what, Peter? What's even more interesting is this: those angels he actually deceived, they were actually in the presence of God themselves. And here we are on earth. God gave us he gave us his word so we can learn his will and be in his presence, and yet we're actually not really reading his word. And so how are we gonna know when Satan comes to deceive us? See? So it's yeah. So I'm gonna go to 499 paragraph 2. I don't think I have any thoughts or comments or questions before we move on.
I was gonna say just one thing. There's that verse that says like like even your own family is gonna betray you, or could betray you. It's talking about like the end times, I guess, that in context of that. But I think it's very important to note that Christ is the only one that we can truly rely on 100%. You know what I mean? Because we're all human, like we can fail each other, but Christ, God is not going to fail us, And I think that's something that the angels, that we can learn from the angels, mistake that they made, and that following Satan before they followed Christ. Just because, like how Peter mentioned that quote from Patriarchs Prophets, that when Satan told them, like, oh, you know what, like you've already gone so far, it's too late for you. Like instead of listening to them, they should have gone to God and asked, first. So I think in our problems, our life problems that we face, it's always important to go to God first. Like before we go to any other human efforts.
True.
Good point.
I'm gonna mention something that could become controversial. I don't know, maybe with us right here, but I think it's very interesting. Do you guys? I'm trying to figure out nowadays in our time we have that there is this mentality of victimhood and blaming others for your own action. And I don't know and I'm going to put it that way. I think I was mentioning that before. I think it is if I mention it, it might become very controversial. But I think Satan is in a sense, I would say, progressive entity. because God wanted to keep everything according to how it's supposed to be, but Satan is trying to change everything under the pretext that it is for the well-being of everyone, or the for the benefit of everyone. And I mentioned that but because on paragraph 2 of page 499 and and 500, actually all those three paragraphs talk about Satan and what he is doing. And so I'm going to start reading from paragraph 2 in page 499. It says, to the very close of the controversy in heaven, the great usurper continued to justify himself. When it was announced that with all his sympathizers he must be expelled from the abodes of bliss, then the rebel leader boldly avowed his contempt for the Creator's law. He reiterated his claims that angels needed no control but should be left to follow their own will, which would ever guide them right. He denounced the divine statute as a restriction of their liberty and declared that it was his purpose to secure the abolition of law, that freed from this restraint, the host of heaven might enter upon a more exalted, more glorious state of existence. With one accord, Satan and his host threw the blame of their rebellion wholly upon Christ, declaring that if they had not been reproved, they would have never rebelled. Thus, stubborn and defiant in their disloyalty, seeking vainly to overthrow the government of God, yet blasphemously claiming to be themselves the innocent victims of oppressive power, the arch rebel, and all his sympathizers were at last banished from heaven. So, uh, I said to me that's like a progressive idea. And even today, we look at many things in our world, how they are taking down traditional families. They're also taking down the way I guess I'm actually very traditional in the way you dress, in the way you speak, in the way you conduct yourself. And even most likely, if you are a Christian, I would say that's even more important for us to be, I guess, in a more biblical way. And now I see is most of the world is, of course, they are trying to destroy the Bible and its precepts because they want to do something contrary, but the Bible, the voice of the Bible is basically showing them that they're doing something wrong. And just like Satan, they want to blame uh, the Bible for their own misbehavior. So I don't know. To me, that sounds like it's a very much of a victimhood mentality that I see now is prevailing today. I don't know what you guys think about it. I guess no comments.
I don't know. I don't have a comment. I guess.
I mean, that's what I see, but it's to me it just looks similar to what's going right now.
I understand what you're saying. I don't know. I understand. I just don't really have a comment.
Oh, okay. So let me read the next paragraph. I think it also goes with the same one. And so it says, the same spirit that prompted rebellion in heaven still inspires rebellion on earth. Satan has continued with men the same policy which he pursued with the angels. His spirit now reigns in the children of disobedience. Like him, they seek to break down the restraints of the law of God and promise men liberty through transgression of its precepts. Reproof of sin still arouses the spirit of hatred and resistance. When God's messages of warning are brought home to the conscience, Satan leads men to justify themselves and to seek the sympathy of others in their course of sin. Instead of correcting their errors, they excite indignation against the reprover as if he were the sole cause of difficulty. From the days of righteous Abel to our own time, such is the spirit which has been displayed towards those who dared to condemn sin. And I think today it's even more um, prevalent in a sense. Um, I think anyone that chooses to live and to teach what the Bible says, they will be, in a sense, marginalized because that person doesn't go with the flow of the world, and that's why I think it is, if we are to be a peculiar people, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, then we're gonna be we of course have to be ready to be different than the world. And yes, I know that could be a very controversial topic to some people, but I think it was necessary to bring it because some might need to know that anybody that would go with the Bible will face opposition with others that hate the Bible in a sense. So apart from that, I don't have much more in the in the chapter to talk about. So the origin of evil. Now the question is, how does God deal with evil? Uh, and the book mentioned, or the chapter mentions, a simple way that God actually deals with evil. Wait, Damien, we're gonna say something?
Well, I was just listening to your question, but I was gonna give an answer, I guess,
Oh, go ahead, go ahead,
to
go
what you
ahead.
were gonna say. No, how does God deal with that? I mean, the book talks about it. He sends His Son, and and we see that, there's a plan of redemption, and then ultimately, those who decided to, follow Christ, or to, to give up their lives and to do, I guess, according to the law of God that He's given us to, like, He's gonna reward us, according to what we did or did not do. So there's gonna be a reward, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah,
And so at the end, we're going to see that, that justice and mercy are the foundation of the law and government of God.
yeah,
And so right now, like, we're living, in a time where we have grace, we have to take advantage of that and truly repent. Or we end up like Satan.
that's actually true. That's exactly what is gonna happen because um and I think, and I'm trying to figure out why. I mean, couldn't God just why did Jesus have to die? That's that's actually a question I think people still have even today. Why not just say something else? And I think the only reason why Christ had to die is because he had to show the world God's character and Satan's character. I mean, if he didn't come to eradicate, so he came to eradicate sin, but the first time he came was to show the world God's character and Satan's character. And I think the cross of Calvary is, when you have nothing to say, basically the cross of Calvary basically makes Satan and all his hosts to be quiet about God's character. And from that there is nothing they can say that can disprove God's true character as a loving God. And I think that is what basically is the essence of the eradication of sin, is the cross of Calvary. And I think somebody one day asked, I was at the Bible study, and the person said, "But why did Christ have to die? couldn't God just say, okay, sin be no more? And I had to, I thought about it, and the text that came to my mind was Luke chapter 17. So, not Luke chapter 17, Leviticus chapter 17. And in a sense, it's talking about the blood being the life of the flesh. In a sense, because the world had to see that God's law can be kept fully. And so Jesus had to show that the law is it's possible to keep the law. And when he did that, then of course by him dying, his blood gives us life because his blood was not tainted with sin. And that test, I think, is the biggest test that will ever exist in the whole world. Jesus Christ died on the cross. And so the origin of evil basically uh, one day will disappear. And I'm waiting for that day to come because I'm kind of tired of living on this earth. Uh, I don't know about you guys, but I'm tired. And for that day to come to where sin is no more, and it will be joy again in heaven and on earth. So, guys, we're almost done. Any last comments or any questions that you guys have?
Well, like you said, Mario, like we have to, like follow after the character of God, and also, I guess, understanding like that ultimately at the end, like his character is going to be a testimony, and also the character of Satan is going to be revealed. And so, I mean, and it's already revealed, and there's a quote here that says, "Now the guilt of Satan stood forth without excuse. He had revealed his true character as a liar and a murderer." And that's something that not just us, but everybody who's listening or people out there, we need to understand that now, And he's causing us, to stumble now, but it's not too late to gain victory.
No.
So that's all I was gonna say.
And so, thanks, guys, for participating today on this chapter called The Origin of Evil. If you have any question to those on Facebook and YouTube watching, you can always drop the question, and one of us will make the time to answer. And if you don't have any question, I hope to see you again next week for another session on Friday with Edwin and on Saturday with one of us here. So until then, bye for now and happy Sabbath.
Yeah. We'll go ahead and close with a word of prayer. Mario.
All right.
I'll go ahead and pray. And then also for next week, we're going to do chapter 31. Chapter 30. So let's go ahead and pray. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I ask that you please be with us, Lord. Thank you so much for the opportunity to gather here through Zoom and on Facebook as well. I pray that you please be with everybody who's listening. Please be with their families as well. Please keep us safe, Lord. There's a lot of things that are going on in this world right now, Lord, and all this is just pointing to your soon return, Lord. I ask that you help us to truly repent, Lord, and to have your character, and to not fall into the temptations that Satan has thrown at us, oh God. I pray that we will take this as a lesson, and that you will help us to truly turn our lives around, Lord. I pray that you please be with us now and help us to enjoy this Sabbath. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, y'all.
Bye.